This video is for information and educational purposes only. This video does not make claims to cure, heal, or help any subject or project matter. This video expresses what was found by Jevim in her scholarly research. Please enjoy.
It's another exclusive. Go ahead and get seated. You know the name. I ain't gotta repeat it. Keep it bumping like a marsh pit. Rocking through the night. If you love it, leave a comment. Hit subscribe and like.
Hi. How we doing?
I'm well.
I'm well,
Allie's
except
here
for my
with
mic's
me
not
today.
working.
Oh, your mic is working. I hear you. I hear you, Paula. This is
Thank you.
Paula.
I heard. Hi, Miss Jevim. Hi, Ellie.
Hi, Paula.
We might have more join soon. Let's see. What is that saying? But you will find the link to the StreamYard if you want to join the round table. It is pinned up at the top. So if you want to come and you want to ask questions, you want to add comments and commentary. One thing we're not going to do today is debate. We're talking on personal experiences, observations, and research. So we're not debating who's right, who's wrong. It doesn't even matter anymore. We're just talking about our personal experiences and what we have seen surrounding and Hillman.
Yeah.
So let's see, who would like to go first? Allie, would you like to go first? Like what you have seen?
Okay.
Experience. It's kind of like an open format.
Right. I suppose really a bit of potted history might put the context. I left Christianity about 11 years ago now, after spiritual abuse by a narcissist, which I was amazed how for almost 30, 40 years almost that I'd known this person, I never picked it up. There were anomalies, but like you do when you believe in somebody and their goodness, you make excuses. You think it's your fault that you misunderstood or there was a reason. And somehow you've got to keep them on that pedestal. And this carried on until my husband approached him with some things that he really needed to change because some people were getting hurt. And he then just turned on the Mr. Hyde. So we had this shock come at us. We didn't know about spiritual abuse. We didn't even know about narcissism. So went online and searched, and lo and behold, everything fitted. It became very, very obvious that we were being maneuvered out, at the same time being blackened in character and motive. So by the time we hung on for about 9 months, but by the time it was absolutely obvious he was never going to change, and he was just galvanizing and hardening and making sure everybody was aware that there were some troublemakers in the midst and, you mustn't associate with them. And so when we did leave, people that I'd known even for 38 years suddenly just cut us off.
Yeah, and that's usually how it goes when you leave cult type settings. That's like the biggest sin, is to leave.
Yeah, but also in reviewing how the group functioned, the subtle way that you think he was doing something that was good for you, you can look back and realize that was controlling. That was cutting off alternative voices. That was creating a narrative that you had to adhere to. It was outing the other people. We are the right ones. It was all of the same dynamics that any narcissist does. You can see it in the Trump MAGA thing. Any narcissist works in the same way. And when I started meeting with the Discord, this is the Myth and More Discord, in December 22, before Baby Babylon, Lady Babylon was launched in January 23. I'd connected with Hillman in October 22, In fact, it was September when it was October. Early November, I had a Zoom meeting with him and Carl Ruck and Rob Street. I was going to discuss the semen communion because that had been an area of my research, and it was the reason why Armin was keen to connect with me, because I'd already done a lot of the research in the text and I knew a lot. You know, I've come from a more academic viewpoint of things. And then by the time things got going in the myth and law, and I was actually interacting with other people, I was beginning to recognize the same dynamics where you put forward questions that really ought to have been engaged with, valid points, valid discrepancies that I was seeing with what Armin was saying and what the text was actually saying, him misquoting it, him producing non-contextual connotations of words that completely changed the portrait of Jesus. And I'm not defending Jesus, I'm defending the texts, because they weren't saying what he was saying they were saying. And I would just ask questions, but nobody would really engage. There was that fear to be seen to agreeing with somebody who was disagreeing. And
Right.
It became very obvious.
And now
there's an echo chamber happening.
Have you heard that like even Ruck is less likely to give pushback for Hillman?
Yes. I can't divulge all that I do know. I'm in very close contact with Stephen Wilson. But Ruck is not willing to outright name Armin, or David as he knew him as. You know, there are good reasons. So I think Stephen's going to present it as Ruck doesn't want to disrespect a fellow scholar. He wants to maintain his relationship with him, or some other reason. But I'm not at liberty to say all that was said. But publicly, that's going to come forward. But there is a very real other reason why Dr. Ruck doesn't want to be too upfront with outright criticism of Armin. One of them is that Hillman is living in one of Ruck's properties at the moment. So there's a lot of history that I've researched.
There is a lot of history, and a lot of interesting things have happened too. Like, so when I was interviewed by Ron of Sean Atwood's channel, I mentioned Hamilton Morris, and I said, Ron, go speak with Hamilton Morris. And then, interestingly enough, what is Danny Jones's last upload? An interview with Hamilton Morris. So you can't tell me that this isn't one big circle jerk of something very interesting and clandestine going on.
Yeah. And I don't know when the Hamilton Morris interview was recorded. It could have happened before you said that to Ron, and then it was released, because Steve always does his editing and tidying up.
Exactly. So well, that's true. Well, it was about a week. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, we don't know. So,
right. Paula, if you have to jump out and just chat in the chat, I will show all of your text up and make sure you're definitely a part of the conversation.
Thank you, dear. It's working out. I got out and come back into a different way.
Okay. Right. I will go back to my story. In these, sort of exchanges on the Myth and Law tab in the Lady Babylon tab in Myth and Law, that was where Armin lived as such, and 50 or so of us were in the group at the time. They decided to start up they, being Hillman and Snappy, decided to start up the Ordo Serpentis Rosae, for which there needed to be an initiation. And Snappy told me, this is by DM, that the initiation at that time was either I had to completely shave my head or I had to take a new sexual partner. And, you know, I'm not going to do that. I've been married for a good 41 years at that time. And, you know, there was not a question. So I asked Snappy, but Snappy said to Hillman, you know, does it have to be like that? And Hillman said, yes, it has to be, which tells me, you know, Snappy said this to me about his conversation with Hillman. So it shows that Hillman was behind the formation of this Ordo Serpentis Rosae, even though Snappy says it was all him. It wasn't.
Well, his books are dedicated to the Order of the Rose, so I mean, making that connection wasn't hard for me.
Yeah. Now, separate to that, after the show that would air on Wednesday and Friday, he had his Wednesday Bible study and his Friday Satanic Initiation. The Friday, well, occasionally, I don't know if it was happening every single time, but there was always an after show chat. Now, for me, this is stupid o'clock in the morning, you know, 2 or 3 in the morning. Well, it's more like 3 in the morning. So I never joined in. But the one of those occasions, Rat King was in this small group, and Hillman wanted them to basically jerk off and concentrate their energies to help him be using an incubus to go and dream rape a couple of people, a pastor and his wife. They were all a bit embarrassed about it. I think Hillman noticed Rat King was quite hesitant, so he shot him a quick email, which Rat King has, and we have displayed that. But this was not in the Rosae. This was not in the Ordo Serpentis Rosae. This was in the Mythanol tab, and it was just probably a 1 or 2 off, where Hillman was creating a persona for himself as some worker of occult powers. He doesn't use an incubus. We know that because later on, the following year, there was an Ask Me Anything, and I think Dion or Snappy asked Ammon, you know, if you could go into a occult shop and pick anything off the shelf, what would you like? And he said, I would like the ability to use an incubus and dream rape. So,
well, you can't pick that up at an occult shop.
Yeah, I know. It was tongue in cheek, but it showed me that he'd been bullshitting earlier, and basically nothing happened. And I think he's bullshitted about the so-called event at St. Mary's. We don't know if that girl just woke up or just had a nightmare. And he claims that she ran off and went mad, which is strange that happened in Israel as well.
And may I add, that's a technique of narcissists.
Yeah,
narcissistic abuse.
Yeah, and it's also strange that he was absolutely obsessed with The Shining when he was 13, and that's really deeply affected him. And I think Jack went mad as well because of the occult powers, and I think that's a trope he's used a couple of times about people going mad when there's occult powers around. So really, the more I've listened to him, the more I've checked facts, the more I realize he bullshits, he lies, he is putting together stories to give himself grandeur, to get people to admire him, which again is narcissism for you. Now, we've seen very much the Mr. Hyde, but the people that were close to him only see the Dr. Jekyll. And I know how that's worked. I only saw a Dr. Jekyll for however many years of the narcissist I knew. But now I'm wise to it, and I can look at little signs. And if you aren't in the good books, you will be a Mr. Hyde.
Yep, and you will be blacklisted. Absolutely. Yeah. Paula, let's hear from you a little bit. Like, what have you experienced? And because I don't think your story's ever been out there, really.
Thank you. And like I say, I'm not feeling that well, but I just want to, I probably can't articulate all that I need to. But I want to focus on, well, first of all, we cannot diagnose somebody of narcissism by simply observing, but one can know from personal experience and see the signs. But what I experienced in that group was the tactics Hillman used to shut down any further education, questioning his superiority or his knowledge. So I am writing it up, and so I guess this will be my first public account of what I want to say that I don't believe anybody said. I'm kind of nervous to say it, but nobody seemed to have refuted Hillman's drug-centric view of Christing. And I've tried in the other forum to bring that up, to ask if people have questioned him or
There's
made
been
a
a great
stance.
pushback.
Oh,
There's been a great
I understand
yeah.
that there's a great pushback, but there's not been what a couple of things that I'm going to try to say.
Okay, go ahead.
Nobody that. Oh, go ahead and ask me, Jevim. I'd rather you lead because.
Well, like specifically, what exactly are you saying that that nobody's questioned? Because
Okay.
we've questioned the translation, we've questioned the motives, ethics, morals of it. So, yeah, please elaborate for us.
Okay. Ironically, well, I still am doing a little bit of research, but ironically, that there was, I just found this out doing research. There was a second council at Constantinople in 553 AD that actively rejected the idea of reincarnation, dismissing earlier Christianity's previous beliefs that correlated to Eastern spiritual traditions or belief or knowledge of rebirth. And that, and ironically, can you gals tell me, did Hillman use any quotes or the research by the ironically, his origin? His name is Origin. He was a Origin of Alexandria. And
Not that I recall.
Yeah, okay, good. I mean, I haven't listened to everything or all that, but I don't recall him doing that. Well, of course, Hillman's not going to mention him or the 553 AD. And hold on, I'm trying to find the date. Or ironically, the name Origin. I'll find the date when his writings were, but he emphasized the soul's purification and rebirth. And it's kind of akin to, say this, the Kundalini enlightenment and the third eye awakening. And this is what I have known and I know to be the inner Christ consciousness. And perhaps people in this group or people that follow him. Now, Allie, you have a better knowledge of the Bible or scriptures, but if people don't have a knowledge of this, a different form of waking, that's what I kept saying. Christing is different. Christing has a different meaning. And that was not put forward to Hillman. And I haven't heard anybody in any of the forums saying that. And like I said, I just learned about that council in 553 AD that rejected it. And origin of Alexandria was circa 184 to 253 AD. And he believed in the pre-existence of the soul and inner enlightenment, which is closely related to Eastern mysticism and Kundalini awakening. So I have a whole big thing I got to write up about how the church corrupted and stopped this information going. So we're kind of like living it fully today. And so I did get this written up. The synopsis of what I'm trying, one thing, the first most important thing, and the other thing I can't really talk about right now, but is the suppressed truth of the spiritual rebirth in early Christianity.
Okay.
Hillman
Well,
denied.
Right now, Paula, now we're discussing the experience surrounding
okay,
Hillman.
yeah. Oh, okay. I can do it. I can. Okay.
If you have experience surrounding Hillman or the Ammonites, please feel free to talk about that too.
Okay, dear. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. I do. I was in the group. I mentioned something like this. I mentioned other resources that could. Well, before I realized what was happening within the group, I tried to mention things, and it was shot down. And it's really strange because I started having I won't go there, but I wasn't able to reply into the group, which is still a strange thing. Then I mentioned somebody else's name who'd done a lot of scholarship, very sound scholarship on what I was trying to say. And again, I was mocked in the group. So with my knowledge about this, that I can't quite explain, I've got pushed back in that group and kind of mocked. And so after I heard him do that, knowing what I know about narcissism and people who are diagnosed with NPD and the abuse and the pain it can inflict, I left. I was still very interested in learning Greek because that's where I came there for, and I started with that. And
were you in Myth and Lore server? What group are you talking about?
I'm just talking about Lady Babylon. Well, did I ever make it in there, Jevim? Remember, I kept trying it.
Yeah, I know that it took you forever to get into our server, but I don't know if you were in the Myth and Lore server.
Yeah,
I know that you were in TX Magi's group.
Okay, yeah, I can talk about that. So after I left, and then I'm supposed I was in Magi's group, yes, which is a whole other strange. Talk about what you were saying about in collaboration with or whatever. I'm not quite sure because we know some of the things that's happened. But while I was in his group, before some things happened, that was the first time I saw you, Allie. When I first saw you in, I hope that's okay to mention.
Yeah.
Okay. It was and I went there with it. Oh, I have hell to pay now, girls. Won't I?
What do you mean? Because you're talking about your truth, your experiences?
Yeah, but holy fuck balls. I didn't know I was going to have to say this.
You don't have to say anything you're not comfortable with saying.
Well,
I just know that you were mistreated in TX Magi's Telegram group.
well, yeah, and let me first disclaim any bullshit they're gonna say. I was at first, I did wrong. I spoke harshly to and lost my patience and maybe had a little bit of judgment because I was like searching for truth and I was like, oh, this is the place. And but I did speak wrongly, harshly, and I'll take full ownership for that. But then I was very careful how I spoke and then we know, Jevim, we know what
Oh, I left as soon as they tried to tell me that all intelligence comes from the seed of man, and I was like, I am out of here.
Oh yeah, and remember, I mean, we'll have to have another roundtable on this part, but just remember what happened to us when we finally were fucking left. You know, it's like, we were bad eggs. Let's just say that, and whoever they are, they know who fucking called us bad eggs. So
yes, we were bad eggs.
Yeah, speaking of the fucking eggs,
we didn't allow them to talk to us just any way they wanted to. So we are bad eggs.
Oh, yeah, girl, and you don't even know some before you. I think you left. You came back. You don't even know some other shit. But yeah, we're bad eggs. Speaking of the egg carrying the seed or the whatever. So before that happened, I went with Magi Dude. Took us to Allie, your first one that I ever seen when you were with 3 other gentlemen. And
Jason, yeah.
Okay, I don't recall the names. I would if I could see it.
Jason's interview, or are you talking about when Allie did Jason's interview?
In October. I did an interview in October with Jason.
Yeah. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Long ago. So,
better late than never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I swear to God, the one person that really screwed with me in Lady Babylon, I swear, they were in that disclosure, whatever you want to call it, disclosure. And Hillman, Maxi Dude, he stuck up for me because I said, hey, this is not okay. And I again referred to the scholars. I'm talking real scholars. I'm not talking like liars. Like, I'll just call them out, Clown and all them. These are honorable men who do things. And I said that there are names in there. And that person said to me, after he mocked me a while, because I was saying that they could back this up. I could back this up with these 2 scholars, and I named them. And the one worked for the Vatican for 40 years decoding the scriptures. So he's not just some Dan McClellan. I'm sorry, I have some issues with Mormonism, me being a ex-Mormon. Well, I wasn't, but
right, yeah.
Yeah, I know all about.
You come from that background, you can diss it just like I come from the South. I can diss it, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I know about a lot of religions I can diss on, but yeah, the Christian too. Anyway, I'm not saying okay. I won't go there. So this person cut me down, and he said that he goes, well, okay, I'll send it to Allie or have her talk to however he said it, and I know who it was. I still, when we get cut deep enough, we kind of tend to remember people's names or logos,
exactly.
And know who it is that came into Texas Magi's.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. I feel so. It's been since October. I've been trying to be able to get this out and speak, I guess.
Yes, and you've really struggled with it, Paula. You've really struggled, and it seems like every time you were almost going to get there, or you thought you had found your footing in a certain group, somebody would come along and just put you down because you were not able to speak as fluently or put things as elegantly or have all your ducks in a
Right.
row, just in a so way. And the
Right.
one thing I have seen more than anything from this whole experience surrounding Hillman is the elitism that he
Mhm.
breeds
Yes.
all around him, right?
Yes.
And I really tried to get other content creators to come on here and talk about how their channels were swarmed during lives. Every
Mm.
time they would go to debunk him,
Mm.
Kip Davis could speak on the cult activities and how they swarmed his channel. Zach of What Your Pastor Didn't Tell You could speak on it.
I
Jacob
got
of
issues
History
with him
Babylon.
too.
Derek of Myth Vision could speak
Right.
on it.
Right.
All of these men know what it's like to be swarmed by the Ammonites. But unfortunately, because of the elitism, because of the scholarly status, I guess, they're afraid to go public and really talk about their earnest experiences. So it takes people like us, women like us, that are not afraid to find our voice and to speak our truth, to say this is what we've seen happening. And it's really
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Well said. It,
Mhm.
um,
Very interesting.
very interesting. And
Because
like I say,
I can certainly reel off a huge catalogue of measures that Ammon or moderators on his channel, I don't know who's behind what,
mhm.
have taken to try and stop my voice being heard.
Mhm.
And then has gone over to Reddit.
Mhm.
I was in the Greek class, just like an ordinary student, learning. Quite keen. I would sometimes, with a few other friends like Old Boy and Nancy, we'd get together and do a bit of revision and go through the exercises together. And there was one time where I had on the Lady Babylon tab, Rob asked me directly just an academic question about what would this verse mean, and I gave quite a full answer. The next day, I noticed Ammon had made a response to me, which is very unusual. He doesn't usually appear on the Lady Babylon tab, but he did. But he'd also just thrown a Benny at Ariel and chucked him out. This is another story. Ariel can tell his own. Quite out of the blue and uncalled for. But I think, honestly, it's because he could see Ariel wasn't going to fall lockstep in line with his agenda. Ariel knew better and he wasn't going to, so he had to be outed. And I think it became obvious that I wasn't lockstep in line either, because after my response to Rob, Armin picked up an irrelevancy and criticized it publicly. I thought, you're not right about this. So I did a response proving from the text that what he said to me was wrong. And then the following day, or later on that day, I then continued to lay out some discrepancies, quite serious discrepancies I could see with what he was saying and what the text was saying. So I did quite a long comment, and the Eon, even at that point, said, look, he apologized to me for, first of all, dismissing what I was saying. And then he said, actually, you're making some very good points that need to be investigated further. So he said that on the 8th of March. On the 9th of March, I was just having a revision session with Nancy and Old Boy. And suddenly Ammon and a big crowd suddenly appeared. And Hillman was absolutely raging about somebody here says I can't teach Koine Greek. I thought, who's he talking about? Because I've never said that. And he carried on, you know who you are, and you be behind people's back, and you're undermining me. And I thought, hey. And then I realized, I thought, okay, I think he's aware that people are going to start actually engaging with the discrepancies that I've been highlighting, and he didn't want me to be seen in front of everybody else to be somebody trusted.
Yeah.
So he made sure he publicly raged at me and made me very much persona non grata.
Made you an example out of you. Absolutely does.
Yes.
But recently, Rob got back in touch, and Rob had actually been present in a Zoom call with Snappy, Amen, and himself, the three of them. And it was Snappy who told Amen that I was going behind people's backs, telling them that he didn't know how to teach Koine Greek, which is not at all what I said. I had messaged Snappy on the 8th of March to repeat some of the things that I'd said publicly on the Lady Babylon Discord, because I didn't know if he'd seen it, hoping that Snappy would get Amen to talk to me. I'd already DM'd Amen twice saying, look, come on, can we please talk? I want to support you, but, there are some inaccuracies coming here. Can we, just get the story straight? And, I wasn't trying to be antagonistic or against him, but he never responded. Snappy then misrepresented what I said to Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Rob said that Amen's face absolutely changed when Snappy said that. He just darkened. He said it was just a cloud went over him. And that's fueled the anger that came out. But, it's not what I said. It's not what I was saying privately. I wasn't going behind his back. I'd already said it publicly, and people agree that I had points to make. But that was the result. So
it doesn't matter the reason. It never mattered the reason. Any pushback, means you gotta go. You gotta go.
Yeah. So anyway, I was still in myth and law. So I started waving red flags about the cult control that was going on. And there were other people present in myth and law who actually agreed with me, and they could, they made some very good points about how things were not free and easy.
Did you, I don't mean to interrupt, did you mean weren't free and easy within the cult or the group or with the pushback? Because I was going to say that what he did, like I say, I'm not qualified. I do have a counseling degree, but it's narcissistic injury when they attack like that. And the triangulation with Snappy to push back, that's what they do. They poison the well.
Yeah. No, it was.
So we have a question, and I'm sure we all three will probably have a different answer. What would you say is among Hillman's most ludicrous claims? I know this may be an arduous task to wade through so many literary fallacies expounded by this man, but please try your best. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and say his most ludicrous claim is probably being getting this huge download from this dig in the Middle East, and it giving him his muse and power to cause all that he has caused since he's started.
Yeah. Well, he's supposed to be starting the apocalypse, isn't he? That was his commissioning from Satan.
Oh my God.
This is so-called authority. It's his mission. It's his calling in life. So that's the story he's told to justify what he's doing now.
That's no different than that what's going on now with the majority of the fake Christianity that, or others, are bringing in the apocalypse.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Of his ludicrous claims, really all of it, but I
Agreed, Ariel. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Drink coffee and drink you some coffee and get your butt up on this panel, because we're going to be going for another hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
He's
I'm
beyond
sorry.
obsessed with puberty, the children before they experience the physical chemical changes. I would have to agree that if the repetition and
Tell a
music
lie
and
enough times.
visuals along with drugs, this is what we're doing, is we're programming. We're
Yeah.
programming through repetition. We're programming through hideous, disgusting music
Yeah.
and hideous, disgusting visuals
It
is
was
what
Edward.
we're
Yeah.
doing.
Edward Bernays.
People.
Sorry.
All right.
Edward Bernays said, I think it's him. Tell a lie enough times, and it becomes people's truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is
Exactly.
brainwashing and a manipulation.
Yeah.
Psychological manipulation. Right. To answer the ludicrous claims.
Floyd, fearless Floyd.
Floyd is the one that will bring it to the larger public on a different level, because Floyd covers geopolitics and politics altogether, as well as law.
Yeah, fearless Floyd. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Poor Stephen says, don't build relationships or rockets without the key.
What?
I don't know.
Not really. I don't know either.
All right.
I got a whole other spiel on the nil connection too.
All right. The ludicrous claims is it all stems from him being puzzled over what Mark 14:51-52 says, but because he'd already started reading the medical texts and some of the procedures that are used. It's like a poultice, but it's a medicate. There's a soaked cloth, lacerations, and you close, and that because they didn't have hypodermic needles, so to get a medicine in, they'd wrap some, wrap a deliberate laceration with soaking to go into the bloodstream. Fair enough. So knowing that technique, it was all in his imagination about how to change perfectly good translation into something that was medical, because that's how he saw it. So he managed to pull out some other connotations of the same words, or claim that they were used in that way. I have searched high and low. I cannot find a single time when sindon, as a word by itself, could ever mean medicated bandage. You've got to add, sindon just means fine cloth.
Right, and you all found the burning purple, or what he was trying to pass off as the burning purple, correct?
Yeah, well, it was the burnt shells of the purple murex mollusk. It wasn't even the purple dye; it was the burnt shells that this Dioscorides was actually talking about. But he just said purple.
Oh, so they cooked the shells.
Yeah, they cook and pulverize the shells, and it was used as a toothpaste, which is obvious. You wouldn't put purple stain in your teeth anyway. And it was used as an antacid for settling your tummy, because
that's interesting, because
it's calcium carbonate.
There's been a new toothpaste come out that turns your teeth purple.
Oh no! Oh no!
I know, right?
All right,
I could probably go find it somewhere, but
yeah, but there are other things that I've not as such written it up yet, and I've discussed it with Stephen, and he hasn't covered it either, particularly. It might come out in his talk with Ruck. I'm not actually, I know his slides, but I don't know quite what's going to come out with the talk with Ruck, because they've had to cut it down. But there are also texts about Medea having what's called the Colchian fire, because she was from Colchis, so she was the Colchian. And the Colchian fire, or Medea's fire, was a purple-coloured flower, the meadow saffron, or the autumn crocus. And one of the people describing the effect of this, it was like a burning sensation on the lips and in the eyes, and if you touch it. So that's the root of this purple flower. So there's a possibility that was the burning purple, but it wasn't the murex. But in the particular book that he had an article in, Carl Ruck also had an article, and Carl Ruck at the time mentioned another scholar's work who had, let's say it was a discussion he had with Carl, but not written up, that he thought that one of the species of the murex, the purple murex mollusks, had entheogenic properties. It was a source of DMT. But it isn't. He found out later it wasn't, but Carl had already written that up and published his article in that book before he then found out from the other chap, actually that was a mistake, there is no entheogenic property in the murex, right? But Hillman had read that and then took it as fact. But when you look at the people who create the dye, it's all over their fingers, they're in it all day long. Are they all high and silly? No, there is no entheogen with the purple. It doesn't give you spiritual highs and visions and everything else that Ullman claims.
Lucy.
From a mistake that Carl Ruck made.
What I've heard is that what I've read is that the smells, like, could you just imagine the smells? Like, the smells alone may make you think you're seeing some stuff, You're dealing with, you're dealing with mollusks, you're dealing with sea creatures, and decaying sea creatures smell. That's like the worst smell in the world, right?
Oh, it is, right? Yeah. But the thing is about to get the purple, you have to do it from an absolutely freshly killed mollusk. You've got to keep them alive until you then break it open and then extract it. So there's no decay, there's nothing. So anyway, that's one of his ludicrous claims. But really, the most ludicrous one is about changing the word lestes to mean trafficker.
Yeah.
It absolutely doesn't. I have searched high and low, so has Stephen, everybody else has. He even claims that it's in Lucian, Alexander the False Prophet. It's not. If there is a mention of pirates, it could be bandits, and they assaulted another young man. It wasn't even Lucian doing it. Lucian's called a robber because of the way he tricked people and defrauded them. He stole from them. All right. And in a long time in his past, before he then changed career to become a professional con man, which he was, yes, he had some sexual encounters with some small boys, but Hillman somehow pushed all this together and taken robber, boys, sex, and made him into a trafficker. And it is not there in the text at all. Which is typical. It's just typical of the way he works. We're just little loose ends. Pull them together and make a conclusion that isn't real. And he does everything.
It's a conglomeration of Hillman. I'm not going to even use it. I'm going to call him David Hillman if I'm going to say it anymore. Of his imagination from what he learned from Ruck, but what my point is he doesn't know. I mean, I have vast knowledge of some stuff people don't even go into. I think I tried to say that at first. He
Yeah.
he doesn't even know the history of the church. I mean, if
No, he doesn't know. He's never
okay,
researched
if
it.
he knew that, he would not be pushing a lot of this bullshit. Okay, so to say the latest case, well, that even the people who wrote in the Bible, the fisher of men, that's a bunch of shit too. To go into the church with the conical hat is a connection to the you can go back clear to Zoroastrianism or whatever, and about
Right. Yeah, and that's
so
how far back it does go.
yeah, yeah,
Mithraicism and Zoroastrianism, and before that, you're going to go on to the Hinduism, right?
but
That's where
yeah,
the whole Aryan hype is from.
yeah, and even before that was what my point. I know we're not debating or whatever, and I am getting that just put together, but this. I didn't mean to, hope I didn't interrupt. When I first realized that he was full of shit is when I won't swear on a professional.
It's fine.
Sorry.
I'm not monetizing this video.
Okay. It's when I heard him. This is when I really backed off. Wait, I can't say it yet. Sorry. It's just that he, like you said, Ellie, he doesn't know about history of I mean, what I know. And he that to me is ludicrous. He claims to know all of this Greek stuff when, Jevim, like you say, I said about the Kundalini, the knowledge of the Hindus. Well, Jesus went and studied, well, they erased that too, but he studied from 13 to 29. Ellie, you would know this more. But
that's a theory, I don't say it.
Yeah, it's a theory, but I am pretty sure the church erased it. So anyway, for Hillman to disclaim the history, the knowledge of the church, and he's just pushing his agenda, especially with the young children.
Yeah.
And what really started his path, this was after I left, and him, like you said, Jevim, with the music, because we know that music does brainwash you. That's very well known. But he pushing those pictures, those AI pictures of the younger children, they could get younger and younger.
Right. Well, it's the exposure therapy. That's what was being pushed in the Discord servers. And Ariel could talk a lot about that too. I'm absolutely sure. They believe in exposure therapy, right? If you look at it long enough, you'll either figure out what you are or what you are not. I'm sorry. I don't need to look at anything pornographic or slightly suggestive pornographic in nature to know that I don't want to touch children.
Yeah.
I don't need to look at that.
Yeah. That's
I don't think that people should have to look at it in order to determine whether they're attracted to minors or not.
Well, in the normal world, I think there might be a little hint of a problem if you're fucking attracted to children. That to me is ludicrous. Now,
yeah, it is.
And this stems also from the church taking over. And excuse me if I offend anybody, but it comes from the Abrahamic religions. It goes back to that and taking these young brides. And we know through our history, a woman is married off to a king.
It's in all religions and all corners of all societies.
Yeah, it is now. But
yes, every class, it's everywhere.
Yes. It is, and it's way deeper than we can even talk about. But it originated mostly in our modern world because of that. And what I feel like this is the other ludicrous part, that what I'm saying about people not knowing the Bible, the history, and all that. they're easily seduced into that by the sound, the music, repetition.
Mm.
And I mean, what? And when he started making those images, being younger and younger, I mean, I can't go into all the where he, some of the ancient tales of the Pornea and all that. I mean, from Lady Babylon, actually, but I don't get why he got on this thing that it involved children.
He's also, he's written Original Sin and claiming that this was a real thing happening in the church. And that
yeah, probably. I'm sure it was.
No, it wasn't. Well, it wasn't.
I mean, the abuse of children was.
Yeah, but not in that way.
Oh,
when you actually trace the text that he used to construct this, you see he's done exactly the same thing. He's made assumptions, put 2 and 2 together and made 58, and created a whole book about it, and then claims that Cyril was teaching it. You read Cyril's lectures, and it's absolutely.
I do want to clarify this. I do not denounce the work that Hillman did to get the truth out there about ancient pathogens and the drug use, because we know the controlling factors that have hidden that. And I do believe in Hillman when he said, how they wouldn't let him publish that. I truly agree with that. And
politically, it was very sensitive at the time. This is when was it? Late 80s. No,
80s when you wrote that book.
It was the 90s.
Okay. Well, I mean, I will give him that, because I mean, if you look back to, I have another thing. I'm not going to say that yet till I write it down, but plants that were used in ancient Roman, that whole economies were built on, and other ways of connecting to higher sources that have been snuffed out by the church and the powers that be. And so he could have done so much good if he wouldn't have had it's called the narcissistic injury.
Yeah.
That's what that I might get in trouble.
I think now would be a good time to see if Ariel's willing to speak up about like what he knows the true agenda is.
Oh yeah,
coming from Hillman, because that will kind of help you put that in a little bit more perspective, Paula.
Okay, because I'd like to know how long Ariel is connected.
He could do so much good. Well, how many people do we see in these powerful leader positions that could do so much good with the platforms they have, but no, they want to do this or they want to do that. They don't want to draw attention, and they don't want to put their channels at risk, and they don't want to do this. They would rather just stay on their own straight and narrow instead of doing what's absolutely required for the betterment of humanity, which is exposing the truth behind a lot of things going on that's super sus.
Yeah, it's ruining humanity. Exactly, our connection to the higher
Ariel,
source.
could you please talk about that?
Oh, Ariel, you there?
I hope he's had his coffee.
Are you muted?
I haven't, and I still did it, and I'm an old fart, so he can do it.
You hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah.
I'm still waking up. I'm better to like respond to things than to like talk straight up. But I mean, I think it's maybe not the best to say that I know what his agenda is. It's more so that like just from what I've seen, it's pretty clear that he's not as innocent as he claims. Like in terms of knowing that there's like this cult-like environment that's been built up, and he's, what's the word? Like, he's basically basking in it and feeding off of it. But what were you talking about specifically?
Specifically, Paula's like, he could do so much good, right? Like, and a lot of people do believe that what he's doing is very, very good, kind of like a necessary evil almost in what he's doing. But you've seen early on with your correspondences with him that this is not something that he decided to, save the world with, right?
He's not saving the world. He, like Ali said, he's initiating the apocalypse, which he claims right out loud.
Yeah.
No, we don't want him dead.
Who said that?
Frog
I didn't say that.
says, what, you all want him dead? No, we don't.
Oh.
We would love to get in serious conversation with him, but he's an elitist and thinks he's too good for us. So
yeah.
All right, Ariel.
I have tried to speak with him, but he loves the cult activities. He's not at all worried about it.
Right. Ariel, is there anything else you want
That
to
was
say?
so funny, Frog. Thank you.
Did you see the other person that said they can't take it? It's driving him nuts.
Oh yeah, that was Devo. That's Devo. He's a Native American biker stoner dude. He's like, what's going on here? Not arts and crafts today.
No arts and crafts today.
Different
Go
kind
ahead,
of arts
Ariel.
and crafts there.
Go ahead,
Exactly.
say more, Ariel. I haven't had coffee. I have a Pepsi with real sugar, and I'm sick, so you can speak up.
I tried to get Doc to come on and talk about his channel. Now, what happened was he pissed Snappy off. And what happened?
With
Doc's
Snappy?
channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doc's channel was reported. I heard what said that got it reported, and it got removed. So,
but was it just that one? Because I looked up and the other shows were there. Unlike Texas Magi, all his shows were gone.
I don't know. I haven't been back.
Yeah, I looked it up, girl. I looked after you told me that, and after he said that video, I looked. His channel was still there, so I don't know if it was just that video.
Well, maybe he didn't lose the whole channel.
It was no, he didn't.
Okay, well, he has a second. He has a backup that looks just like it, but there was mass reporting done by the cult that got got removed.
Yeah.
Now, if it was back up, that we would know about it.
No, I'm not saying that one was up. I'm not saying that one was up. I'm saying his whole channel was still there. That's why
Oh, okay. Well,
but that
maybe just the post. Not the uploads, but like the community post. Yeah.
No, I'm not even saying that the show didn't get taken off, but I'm saying his other shows were still up. But I'm not saying he didn't get bombarded by them. Of course they did that.
Right. Well, he's using his backup channel that has less than 400 followers on it now, where he had close to 2,000 followers, and because Snappy said, Kyle, I think it was Kyle said something, and that was it. It was like, so now he's using his backup.
That they can do.
Invited him, but I'm probably not going back to Doc's channel, period, because
there was a couple of.
Well, I mean, they keep making fun of people, and then they started making fun of me, and I was like, I don't need this from anybody, So, hello, Eddie. Welcome to the chat. So yeah, I don't need to be around anybody that is,
negative or
right, exactly. But when you turn your comedy around on somebody that has shared information with you, you can just, ride off into the sunset. That's kind of the way I feel about it. There was no reason whatsoever to turn. Well, Kyle's an angry guy, and we're pretty sure he doesn't like women. And I'm just like, why just turn your venom? And that's so crazy. It seems like people have to have a place to put their venom these days. Not on me, you know?
It's because they don't know how to heal their wound within themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Find forgiveness for themselves.
Oh, who's trolling in here? Occult? Well, Frog Sprog said that we were. Don't time him out. Don't time or them out. I don't know who they are. I thought it was really funny. You know,
Yeah.
people think, it's so crazy. It's like you just speak your truth, and people's like, she's got an axe to grind. And I'm like, no, I'm talking about my experiences, like
Yeah.
everybody else has the right to do that, that they like to do. And one thing that happened after my interview with Sean is I got all these, I got signed up. This is another thing that they like to do, is they like to sign you up for all these things like therapy, retreat centers, insurance, day spas, I don't know, mystery box of dildos, monthly dildo
Oh,
sign up.
yeah.
I don't know. It's just, those are the things that has
What
happened
the
to me
fuck?
within once I left the cult. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Whoa, I didn't know that part.
Which master Hillman is a veritable charlatan, and I say that unapologetic. Sorry to be so harsh. Please continue. All right. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the discussion. I promised a few women that were excruciatingly alarmed and disturbed with their experience of the cult. I promised them that I will always talk about it. And we haven't had a round table in a good long while. And I thought that maybe it was time to just, let's rehash. Let's talk about things that we've went through since our last round table. So thank you. That's rather reptilian, using intimate info as a weapon is closed world. It is. It is.
Yeah.
But here's the thing is, why or how else do you present the truth? How else do you say, we know he was lying about the facts surrounding why he got fired? Okay.
Yeah.
And in order to show the public that we know he's lying about the instances surrounding his firing, we're going to have to get into some personal things, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have to dig into some personal things. Unfortunately, that has to happen.
And we're also risking.
Right. So, in order to bring information to the public, Allie, you're muted. You have to put your neck on the line, literally. There's a target on my back and has been.
Yeah, I've been the subject of quite horrendous slanders. They're almost amusing,
You
really.
have, Allie.
Oh yeah, and a whole litany of measures he's taken on the YouTube channel. Now, whether it's him or the admins, I don't know, but I've for some reason, I don't know how they've managed to do it, but if anybody in live chat says @Ali Rowan, it comes up with this bold orange outline. And this happens throughout YouTube. If I'm on a different channel.
Who the hell's doing that?
I don't know. They did it to Rat King. And I think, Ariel, you used to have a different account that it came up on as well. And the three of us were highlighted. And if that meant the rest of the people in the chat would pile on and make pushbacks. So, I was scrabbling to try and, make some responses to them. He then made me what's called a hidden user. So any some of the comments that I made were reserved for moderator review. That's the expression I think they call it, which means they're not visible to the public. I can see them, the admins can see them, and the idea was that they would review it and then release it to the public. But of course they weren't released, So so many of my good comments, which are full of facts, full of rebuttal, from the text, from the sources, from the history, from any angle, every angle, he was creating a load of bullshit and I was pointing out where it was. Those comments got hidden. And this would happen in replies. I would get into a string of replies with one or two of the Ammonites.
Mhm.
And some of my replies were hidden. So it looked like an Ammonite would make a point and I was silent. I couldn't respond to it. And they'd make another point and I was silent. I couldn't respond to it. And that's what it looks like. But I was
They steal your voice. Yes,
Yeah.
over and over and over, they will steal your voice and cause,
Mhm.
and they will create the echo chamber.
Yeah.
And the
And
best example for that echo chamber is seen in the Reddit group. And I want to
yeah.
answer this one down here. Did the chick really claim he astral graped? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. She fully believed it. And if Cheryl was here and if she's listening, she could probably maybe add to the chat. If Cheryl was here, she could tell you people have come to her. Many people have come to me, not just the females, all right? Not just the women have told me he's come to me in my dreams. He's come to me in my dreams. Do I think that he has some otherworldly superpower? Fuck no. I know how people's minds can be programmed, the power of suggestion. And there is a great number of people that are very, very easily hypnotized. Now, one thing everybody might not know, Rob Street is a professional hypnotist and worked with Hillman. Rob Street also has been talking and working with Allie, and Allie had communicated that her and him had a good long bit of communication. And from that, I said, okay, let's bring Rob into my Discord server. Rob got brought into my Discord server. What did Rob do? Not even 24 hours later, he had already spammed the server, attacked Ariel, who's right here and can speak of it, and caused great disruption in a Discord server where there had not been any in a very, very long time. So when people make these claims, I like to believe them. Susan, hello, great sweetie. Hello, I'm very interested in the topic you're speaking about and your personal experiences. Would you like to come? Jack. Jack, the link to the panel is up here. Could you please could you come up on panel, or I won't bring you up on panel, but
No,
come on
you want
and put your link in the private chat so I can open it and find your channel.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I will continue to talk about it because I promised other people that I will always talk about this situation.
Yeah.
And to just let you all know, I have never had Hillman contact me and say, stop talking about me. I have never, ever, ever had any other person say, stop talking about me. However, I will talk where I am legally able to talk. I never signed an NDA. I never signed an NDA. Maybe they should have had me sign an NDA. These girls definitely let in their head. I do believe, yes, they do. Well, I mean, here it's like, what was it? I can get it. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Put it in the general chat and I will go and look at it. Thanks. Thanks, Belle.
Yeah, I was going to say, before regarding what was it, like the accusations against him regarding the dreamer or whatever, like the stuff that is like in the court documents that like basically prove that what he said about why he got fired was a total lie, but not only that, it what he's been accused of, like to the point that the university let him go. It wasn't just some allegation. It was something that was credible enough that the university acted on it, and it basically the type of behavior is inconsistent with the with what basically, there's two ways you could frame everything he's talking about. One is that he really, really has an issue with abusive behavior in modernity and in the past. But the problem is that the way he acted when he had a position of authority is not that dissimilar from basically it matches more with someone who, and again, I'm not saying that he himself has personally victimized anyone. I mean, like, the court documents can tell you that, but that basically the context in which he's bringing up all the sexual violence in the ancient world, given his own track record, it kind of raises the question, how much of an issue does he actually have with the stuff he's talking about is so horrible, while he's also talking about it very salaciously.
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. Can I just backtrack for a few seconds and correct something you said about Rob? We do want accuracy. Rob said that he studied hypnosis, but he'd never practiced it. He's not a professional.
He said he studied but never practiced.
Yeah. He didn't become a professional hypnotist, as I'm just saying that. Let's try and be as accurate as we are.
Get that clear, because how many of us have been educated in the universities and studied something and not went into a work study program or a.
All right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And as I say, I want to say a little bit more about Rob. He came into the server after he'd had a very, very, very long conversation with myself and Ariel. And he was trying to keep us in a mind loop, trying to get us to confess to something, basically. But he called me slandering Amen by some things that I'd expressed as opinion and let them know this is opinion, all right, which is a very different sort of communication to the sort of slandering that Amen was doing, where he was creating lies, absolute lies, and even in the face of hard evidence against it. So, I've had accusations leveled at me that I'm sending people to spam Snappy's channel. They said that I was supposed to have sent people to say awful things and, spam his channel. I thought, what? Where did that come from? That I was rude and I used to,
Yeah, Snappy's tried to say that I spam too. That's fine. You're fine.
They always accuse people of what they're doing.
Yes, that's probably it. That's probably it.
Projection.
Yeah. But the reason why I've been keen to expose the fact that Hillman cannot be trusted in what he says about his past, and that's been proven by the court documents, I've also looked at his divorce documents, and not everything he's claimed about that is true. I've looked at how he claims his wife was struck off from being an anaesthetist, because she'd accidentally killed somebody. No, that's not true.
Well, I have him on. I recorded him. Basically,
and that
reiterating a tale of Medea, and I'm like, you turned your wife's story into a Medea story.
Yeah, and at that time, only was it last year, year and a half? Yeah, about last year. It was that his wife was only just really, still in a secure mental institution. No, she's not. She's practicing in Wisconsin, Madison.
I don't
in
think
the hospital there. There's so many lies he tells just to keep his own story and persona impeccable and sinless and perfect, and that everybody else is at fault always. And then laughably, he even says on one of his streams about, the devil's told me I can't tell any lies. What? Not even try and protect somebody? No, you mustn't tell. And then the number of times when he says, about his integrity and I'm only bringing you the truth. And usually in those shows, he has told one of the most ridiculous lies. And I've seen the lie and then laughed when he says, I only have the utmost integrity in bringing this to you. You can virtually guarantee every time he claims his innocence, he's guilty.
He's copying.
And I thought it was quite significant how recently he went over again his Tel Megiddo experiences, and he started it with, I'm not making this up. It's complete. I'll only be truthful about this.
Wait,
and he made that. Yeah.
Which one?
Story.
Oh,
Yeah.
Megiddo, sorry.
At Tel Megiddo. So I can't take anything he says seriously. The number of times I've found him not telling the truth. I don't know what to believe is truth, and certainly with his translations, blinking it. I've spent so long going through.
I'd like to point out, Ellie, you have we've seen that your proof. So this anybody that says everyone is spreading lies, that's not true, because you had said you have proof.
Yeah, so
I've seen it. I've seen the document, and not as thoroughly as you.
Yeah, and
that's the issue. That's the issue, guys, is nobody wants to go through the arduous, tedious reading of court documents, right? They just want to be able, people would rather believe lies. This, with the way the world is now, I've noticed it's much easier just to fall in line with the law. It's so bad.
And you belong to a group. I understand the group dynamic where they're almost like a maverick. This Renaissance portal that's opened, and they've got this mission to help him be an evangelist with his theory, but he calls it the reality. I wouldn't mind if you just said, look, here's a great theory to get, this is what I think. But no, he's claiming it's the reality. He's getting people to actually believe it and stir up hatred, get them to actually be evangelists, and finding an awful lot of unpleasantness coming back. It's not right.
Also, think about it this way. Part of the reason so many people are believing it is because what he's telling them is essentially there's this essentially the fountain of youth that people can tap into, and so it's not simply a matter of
unassailable freedom.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He promised unassailable freedom is what he promised on the Danny Jones show.
And that is thanks, Ariel. That is counteractive to what you weren't here when I spoke about before, but the actual rejuvenation of the body to do what he's saying. He's saying it has to be done through drugs or
and what he's not telling you is what I found out is the oracles of ancient times lived a very short life. That is where the saying "only the good die young" come from. The oracles might have granted you a little bit more life, but her life ended usually before the age of 30.
Yeah. All right.
But there are we know new things of how to live longer.
You're cute too, Frog Sprog.
Yeah.
Can I just circle back round again? This because in his second interview, just prior to his encounter with Bob Larson, he gave his testimony. No, actually, during his encounter with Bob Larson, he gave his testimony, and I thought this was extremely telling. Now, this is an observation. I'm not saying it's the truth, so don't jump on me. But it's an observation and some thoughts that I had. He talked about, as a strict evangelical Christian, he was basically following the purity culture laws, which means, complete celibacy until you're married and you have your sex. And he said how he was feeling so guilty, like Jesus was watching him when he masturbated, and felt so ashamed. And, you know, he gave himself religious trauma. You know, that sort of evangelicalism is awful, because it will,
horrible.
Yeah, it will give people religious trauma, and he suffered with it. But when he found Aristotle extolling the beauties of nature and what is natural, and if he said that you know, you follow your natural urges, he's saying, and that it's beautiful and it's the law of nature and shouldn't be legislated against. All right.
Right.
So for him, it was immediate freedom. This is what he's talking about, the unassailable freedom from what he calls monist. It should be monist, from those regulations about keeping yourself pure, because Jews and also Muslims in the more radical sections of those religions won't have any sex before marriage. But then marriage was about age 14 anyway, so you didn't have to hold yourself off for long. But
Christianity does that too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It is the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
So, and there's probably other, Sikhism. I don't know what their views are, but I'm saying that it looks to me like the unassailable freedom he experienced, he then wants to bring to the rest of the world by absolutely making Jesus into a sex monster and saying, look at the hypocrisy here. Yeah. This is your Jesus.
Right.
Throw out all of Christianity, because this is really what Jesus is like, and then follow nature.
Right. That's what my first opening is. I'm saying it's not what Christianity was. That's what I will write about. That what people know as now is not what it was.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And I just let me finish this, because I see that comment. There is something that needs to be addressed about the incubus, succubuses, and all that, and the demons back from that. I don't think we should, unless this isn't the place to talk about it, but are things that need to be discussed about that.
Yeah.
You can't just discount that.
Yeah. I think also
Witchmaster, I will definitely check out that dream scenario.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not big into movies, but if it is related to things that I've experienced and my research especially, I will definitely look at it.
Yeah.
Good. I didn't even know there was a movie like that, but I'm speaking to you from knowledge and experience.
Yeah. But as you say, Paula, Oman hasn't researched the development of Christianity. He has his own theory about Jesus being this monster, and then it was all hushed, and the official church sort of put it down in the crypts and kept it going secretly. But no, that didn't happen in that way.
No, the church totally rewrote who Jesus was.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, virtually everything in the New Testament was only finished in the mid 2nd century. Even Paul's letters were added.
Yep.
Everything is
we've been lied to so bad.
Highly mythologized. If there was a Jesus, I think there was, and I think he was a rabbi that just had a more lax view of the law, and that was it. And then his body disappeared, and then all the myths started about, like Heracles was apotheosized and went up and became a god, and Jesus did that, and
Well, just like I said, Origins. I mean, what a more appropriate name? Origins, the guy in 185 AD. Let's think about that.
Well,
and
exactly, Susan. I wanted to bring Belle up. Belle, yes, we have all been involved in the cult of Amen Hillman, or been around Hillman, studied with Hillman, been affected by what Amen Hillman is doing and the message that he's pushing.
And
we're here today to continue to talk about it, because I said I always would would talk about it, and that's what we're doing. I was interviewed by Ron of Sean Atwood over the
Yes, she's
situation,
our girl.
and I want to bring up how Snappy, like, it was really
Oh,
interesting how Snappy just pushed his way through to Ron and
eh,
said, and like running damage control and then even more damage control.
mhm.
And Bill, if you go to Sean Atwood's channel, you'll see if you scroll down enough, you'll see my picture. If you don't care to drop that link in the chat. And I'm like, they're in the comments running damage control and naysaying, and I have never had anybody try to hush me up as forceful as this group.
Yeah, and Snappy
This
actually
group,
lied.
major damage control that they've been running. They've tried to downplay my intelligence and my research for 30 years, and just they were like, she has no idea what she's talking about. This is just a book club. Okay. This is a book club.
Mhm.
Oh, little do they know what we got up our sleeves.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Ariel. Thank you for joining us. If you come back, you are welcome back up here on the panel. Okay. Let's go back here. Yeah, Bill, I could give you the run. Hi, everyone. New here. Occult. I watched you do a tarot reading once and subbed right away. You guys are great. Thank you. Is that Hot Ink? Thank you.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
love to read
Thank you.
tarot, and I do it often as a form of giving back to the community. It's
Yeah.
a form of therapy for me and for those that I talk to about it. But and the reason that we have not been back on Sean Atwood is because Ron's been really busy. There's a lot going on their plate. Stories that are much more prominent, like the Diddy case,
Oh, yeah.
and
Death of the Pope, and lots of things have
the
happened.
death of the Pope, all of that stuff coming out too.
To the institution of the new Pope.
Year of the Snake, it's going to be very transformative. You're going to see a lot of things changing, upending, and switching around.
Yeah. I think.
But
Yeah.
I was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, when Ron was questioning you, he was wondering if Armin might be connected to some larger umbrella and be like a spoke, and that there might be other Armin type persons around. I think Ron really was groping because he didn't have the information. Personally, from what I've seen and try to understand of what Armin's doing, he's just a lone ranger. He's just on his own mission. He's not funded by anybody else. We know that. And actually, there's very little other than gaining his own little kingdom to satisfy his own needs, really. He has had an experience that was liberating for him, and he thinks the rest of the world need to know it as well, and has concocted this story about Jesus to make him a monster, and thinks that this is going to destroy the church, and then everybody can have free sex. And that, in a nutshell, is a rather probably unprofessional analysis of what he's about. And I don't think there's any other nefarious organizations.
I think there might be some more input into that, but
maybe. But we've not had any proof of it. He says he's not in the Masons, despite some people trying to contact him. He's widely read in the occult. He's a Thelemite. You can certainly see that, and he manipulated the so-called vote of Jesus being guilty of the crimes of really only of trafficking, of making money, when you actually listen to his
really,
not the pederasty. The pederasty is absolutely essential for the mystery, and he was claiming he wanted to reinstate the mystery. But when I highlighted that in my October talk with Jason Horsey, and he's not brought that up again since. And beforehand, the portal had to be opened through a 14-year-old girl in sexual ecstasy. Yeah, that was how a portal was going to open. But now, now the portal is being opened just by his teaching.
Did he get some kind of any kind of evidence for that?
Yeah, but it's not. You see, I think he's trying to create the narrative as he goes along, because the Medea with her vaginal eos right doesn't exist. I've looked at the text he used to create it, and the references he has are to an article that Carl Ruck had written, and what Carl Ruck wrote wasn't anything to do with it. But Hillman he's got this way with his Orphic Vox of looking at a word and thinking that's code for something else. So he's looked at words like kolpos and always thought that has to be vagina. And there's a particular passage in De Ordris Siculus where he's describing one of the myths of Medea. And she made a wooden idol of Artemis, which was hollow. Now, hollow is kolpos. And it said she hid her best drugs in the kolpos. So therefore,
I would agree with that. I mean, there's other factors into this, Allie, that you may not be aware of about some Nordic Jevim knows, but
yeah,
like I say, I have to write it up. So
yeah, okay.
Well, that's completely different. People have done that since time immemorial. Then I mean, I have smoked hashish that was smuggled through a vagina of a friend from Amsterdam. So I mean, that's completely plausible to me.
Yeah, but in the
because
story,
people do that all the time.
Yeah, but there's
in the story, she was actually hiding her drugs in this idol, and she wanted to take the idol into this person that she wanted to kill, and that was her way of smuggling the drugs in. And it was in a wooden statue, and that she brought the wooden. This is her Christing apparently. She used the substance to smear. That's the word, creo, to smear in her hair to make it go grey, so she could disguise herself as an old woman, and then disguised as an old woman with this hollow statue. She was going to get into the king's palace and do the dirty deeds, get her revenge.
Did you just call it a Paulus statue?
And no, it was just a little wooden statue of Artemis.
I thought you had a name for it.
No.
The palace, like the Liberty.
All right.
I want to address what Ariel said about the Orphic Vox. It is an actual thing. Otto Kern talks about it. That's what Otto Kern was known for, Ariel. Yeah. So if it's an invention, it's not Hillman's invention. It's something that he's learned through his research and study.
Yeah, but he applies it everywhere. The Vox Orphica could exist in the very flowery poems that ode to the gods and goddesses. I don't know, about 50, 60, 80 odes that are written in the Orphic hymnology. And that's a genre of literature where you could substitute with poetry all the time. You're using symbolism.
It goes even deeper than that people aren't aware of.
Yeah,
it goes to the logos. You know,
right.
I'm back. What I was going to say is I forget how we ended up discovering this was like early on before. I think this was even before you got involved with Alma and Jevim, but basically we ended up looking into the context of like Kern's Orphic Vox. It's either like completely different or has nothing to do with what Amon's talking about, and he's using it as a way of the word, like of pigeonholing or like forcing his what he wants to be true down people's minds, and basically convincing them, oh well, it doesn't have to be literally true because this is a code, and And the thing is that even if Otto Kern discovered it, he lived in, like right before the modern era. And so there's the issue of, is this something that's actually real, or is it something that, Otto Kern made up? And even then, if it's, basically from what I remember, because this wasn't something I looked too deep into, but that it's basically just something that Armin's been using to obfuscate reality.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. There's also the Vox Mystica, which Albert Dieterich sort of discerned in the PGM. That's the Papyri Graeci Magica. Basically, it's the Greek magical papyruses. And again,
Right.
you've got code words in these chants, okay? But Armin assumes that this Orphic Vox is being used by anybody writing any literature. So he's assuming that the gospel writers are using it, that the Old Testament writers are using it. To secretly code, there's a mystery, there's a cult mystery going on here. You've got to read under the lines. This is an esoteric meaning, and that he has this illusion that everything in the Bible, not everything, he says certain authors only used this Orphic Vox, and he can see it and he can draw it out. But no, all he's seeing are words that coincidentally, in a different text, in a different context, have a cult or drug meaning. And then he takes it from that context and forces it into the Bible, and he's created his own context. And he's redefined certain words. Yeah, and he's redefined certain words and repeated it so often that as soon as he says Lestes, people think trafficker. No, it isn't. It never was, but he's repeated it so often.
Right.
It's got into the subconscious. It's not a naked kid. He was a fully clothed young man between the age of 21 and 28. That is the known age range at the time of the Roman Empire. They were using Hippocrates' groups of sevens, and this is the fourth seventh.
Wow.
The third seventh. Fourth, seventh, and that is the age range. It is fixed. It's between 21 and 28. He's not a naked kid, and he was fully clothed. Well, let's say he had a sheet wrapped around him, and that sheet came away when they tried to grab him.
Right.
And he very well could be getting some medicine.
Well, he wasn't getting any medicine. He wasn't doing anything with medicine.
Well,
absolutely nothing. It was a whole sheet.
What I wonder is, okay, if Jesus was doing all this bad stuff, okay, then where did all the teachings of the Bible that we pretty much everybody was raised around, where did those teachings come from? Why doesn't he point that out, right? Why does he not show us, this is the truth, now this is where the lies come from, right?
Because he doesn't even know.
Argument if he did that.
Yeah.
There's a freebie for you.
Yeah, it really, his monster Jesus doesn't fit with the rest of the whole testimony in the Gospels. And he calls it the fairy tale Jesus, but that's 95% of the Gospels, and his monster is only 5%. I think 95% wins over 5 somehow.
It also raises the question.
Close, Belle. Let me address this with Belle. Belle, if you were to research the work of Armin Hillman, you will see that a lot of his stuff stems from James Hillman's philosophies. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Belle.
James Hillman isn't all that bad. I mean, he doesn't seem...
No.
Okay. No. Let's give him credit for that.
But
right.
Yeah,
but
it is worth saying that, like what you said, Ali, like regardless of like whatever percentage he's using to try to make into the entirety, the whole idea of like the Neoniscos being a young boy, why is he so obsessed with it being a young boy and like refuses to accept that it could be anything else but it? And I mean, I think that it kind of goes into I don't know. I'm not going to speculate why, but something that I do think is worth mentioning because Witchmaster mentioned Priscilla Presley. If you want to throw that comment up, saying that Priscilla Presley was 14 when she met Elvis in the 1950s. Could she have been selected for ritual purposes as well as romantic ambitions? This is literally in one of his videos. Amon talks about how was it Bacchus brings Aphrodite or something, like super creepy. He showed a bunch of video footage of like teenage girls like swooning over Elvis, and the way that Amon was talking, it's just straight up disturbing. And it's like he's trying to like, and again, it's the type of thing where like, oh yeah, you can definitely draw parallels, but why is he so obsessed with like finding parallels to like ancient pederastic rituals in modernity? And it's like, okay, maybe it'd be one thing if he was talking about it in certain context, but he's talking about it as if it is like sacred, and that's the thing. I think he does think it is, and it's the type of thing where it's like, okay, maybe had we been living 2,500 years ago, maybe we'd feel the same way. But like we live in a society that recognizes that there's more to life than just following ritual, that it's about ethics and morals, and that there's times where that conflicts with what people perceive as ritual or tradition. And it's kind of like in the same way that we recognize that certain things that were practiced in antiquity and weren't necessarily like done for like like it wasn't necessarily people trying to hurt each other, but like it still did. Like we can recognize that like there's a difference between the intention of the ritual necessarily, because not everyone who engaged in like harmful rituals necessarily knew or were doing it for that reason. But then inevitably there would be people who they used the fact that they had that position of power to take advantage of people.
Yeah. I can give you an answer.
And he also mentioned there was several different live streams where he brought up graping, like ritual graping, as if it was sort of a sacramental thing. Do you all remember that?
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff he's brought up and then dropped. He's he talked about baby blood, and he talked about the Medusa, the one that had been the one who was going to become the equivalent of Lady Babylon, had to eat her own fetus, her own, and it was all sorts of weird stuff he's brought up, but they were just like one-offs, and then he dropped. He does a lot of outrage farming. That's
Hello.
a mistake. Hello, Jack.
I wasn't expecting.
All right. I can give you an answer, Ariel, as why it has to be a prepubescent. He's found one of his medical texts that talks about a prepubescent, like very immature ejaculate being very rich in the drug that they've absorbed to make an antidote, apparently. So that's why he has to be prepubescent, because that type of rich ejaculate is supposed to be the the best, the most potent medicine. So he's imported that into, that's what he's seen, and that's how he's tried to change every word in those two verses to make that become a reality. But he has to change every single word, and I've got this on my website, very detailed, going through Mark 14, 51 and 52, his version, and then looked at every word he's taken and how he's changed it illegitimately. And also the lace days. I've got quite a bit of stuff on my website. Loads more to put in. I never get around to doing it.
Now, Ali, did we figure out if he was falsely representing the text that he would like splash up on the computer screen?
Yeah, that often
As
happens.
he's spinning that.
Yeah. I can't read Greek fast enough up on screen, but I can freeze frame it and then chase it up through the Perseus site, which will give you the definitions. I don't subscribe to the Lieb catalogue where you can get the English and Greek side-by-side translations up. But I can use the Perseus site to chase up. But he also uses a site for the Septuagint. The screenshots that he does of the words from the Septuagint, excuse me, they're taken from a site called Elipos, and I know the site, I've used it a long time, so I can usually find those texts, and it's got the Brenton English translation against it. The interesting part was he pulled up a section from the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 12, verses 3 through to 6. He very selectively just showed a couple of verses, missed the beginning, missed the ending, talked about that, and then went on to the next verse, and it was all about, actually, it was not about what he claims. He claimed it was how the Hebrews, as these child traffickers and cultists, were doing all these nefarious things, including the semen communion. That's there actually in the text. And eating feasts of flesh and blood and murdering children, and all of that is in this little text. And he says that's what the Hebrews were doing. And
I want to touch on this. All of this stuff is blood libel. Like, these are all things that Jews have been traditionally accused of by people who didn't like Jews and have led to anti-Jewish violence. And given, I don't want to connect it too much, because obviously it's not connected, but insofar as that they both tie to viewing Jews as being behind something wrong or evil. This stuff has teeth, and it has real effects. I mean, given what was it I was going to say? Oh yeah, that basically he tries to turn the word Hebrew, the noun Hebrew. It's derived from the Semitic root, Semitic root, ayin bet resh, which means to transmigrate or to cross over. Avar, it's and basically what he's trying to do is take the term which means to move around or to migrate, and he's trying to use that as to say, oh, they were moving around, or they were moving children or whatever. It's absolute insanity, and it's the type of thing where he's not saying that it was only the Jews, but he's talking about it in a very sinister way when he talks about Jews, and when he talks about the Greeks, he talks about it in a very fetishistic way.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
True. Right.
And wasn't that Myth Vision podcast addressing that very thing?
I don't know. I don't keep up with all these.
No, the
channels.
one that was on, he did tonight or yesterday.
Oh,
I thought I heard.
yeah, I don't keep up with any of them. No, they have
he
all blacklisted, blackballed me. They don't care about anything that I have to say because I speak out against.
Well,
their
no,
friend,
he was speaking against Hillman. He was speaking against Hillman.
No, what I'm saying is Derek is Neil's friend, and Neil is Snappy's friend, and you see how the circle jerk just kind of continues. So you talk about one, you talk about all of them, and then you get blackballed, and nobody wants to talk to you because you're speaking your truth.
I think his last podcast included that.
Yeah. All right. Am I able to get back to what I was saying about him hiding the Greek? Because although he spins a tale, this is him doing justification for why his idea of the mystery rite being done through girls became a mystery rite done through the boy that then Jesus is supposed to be abusing. Okay. So this is all part of his creation of his story. And he says it was the Hebrews that were doing this, but as a rival sect called the Jews, from Judah, the Judaites, they then made their own deity, Yahweh, and he was patriarchal rather than the Aphrodite and the other goddess, can't remember now, that the Hebrews were worshipping. So he's created all this backstory of bullshit mythology.
Asherah, is it Asherah, Astarte?
It wasn't Asherah, no.
Yeah, she was married to Yahweh.
Yeah, but he doesn't go into that history. He makes his
he
own.
doesn't know it. I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he makes his own history.
He talks about he talks about Aphrodite and Bacchus.
But on these particular streams, he's talking about the dominant female and how there were female priestesses, and he wants to create a new religion where it's Yahweh and using boys. All right. So this is his new creation, and that apparently the Yahwists came in and they were decrying the Hebrews for doing all these things. But the text actually says the bit that he didn't read was that these were the activities of the Canaanites who inhabited the land before the Hebrews came in. And he doesn't show at the end was it was your will to destroy them by the hand of our fathers. And those fathers would have been the Hebrews. So it's completely upended exactly what the text was saying. He was saying the Hebrews were doing it, but no, the text actually says the Hebrews were the ones that drove out the Canaanites who were doing it. That is the truth of the text. But what he showed and what he talked about was very limited, so that he didn't allow people to read the whole thing. I know the text, I immediately recognized it. And I know where to find it in the Elipos site, and you can see it there very, very plainly in the English translation. But this is just typical of how he will manipulate his people to believe his bullshit. He is not truthful. All the time, he is not being truthful, and yet comes over with such confidence and throwing his authority card around about, I'm such a great Greek expert, and all these people, they don't read the text I do. It's all a lie. I can't say it any more clear than that. And I just hope that the people that have swallowed all his Kool-Aid start vomiting it out, because it is toxic. It's created it might be a nice, happy community, and they enjoy being together. They enjoy being an elite that have the truth and that they're going to pull down Christianity, or even if you think it's a satire and you're just laughing at how ridiculous it is, it's all part of cohering together as a group. And I understand.
Can I just say something about the group?
All right, then, go on.
Go ahead, Paula.
What I know from personal experience is people, because I heard the echo chambers coming out into even like the cosmetic group, but other people saying he's just reading from the text.
He's not.
This is their justifications for their whatever this is. So my point is,
he's not. Yeah, he's not just reading the text, is he?
He's retranslating the text.
He's retranslating, and he's only reading it from the Greek by instilling Mother Greek. That's the perfect. Well, you know what? The German language is, I would argue, arguably superior in many ways, or at least. But this is what I'm saying. If I can't say what I gotta write it down. But what he did when I realized the leap, not acknowledging the and decrying criminal behavior from anybody telling about the past documents. That is how it's a cult. You know how it's controlling.
Well, and claiming that it's all theatrics or satire. Okay, theatrics. Why do we have to have this disgusting music from Teddy Bass. It's
Because
absolutely disgusting.
they do it. It's programming.
It's so gross. Teddy,
For
if you're
19
listening, your music is absolutely disgusting. And why does he have to use all the pictures? It's exposure therapy.
And
It's
Chewy's making it.
brainwashing and
Chewy's
exposure
making
therapy.
them. Chewy
It's not just
can.
reading the text.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, the thing is, he's transplanting different meanings into the words. He's not reading the text as it is. Anyway,
Mhm.
I guess that's where the people have argued that Hillman isn't as smart as he thinks he is because he doesn't know.
He's extremely smart. He
I mean,
knows-
about I should say historically.
no, and how he, I think, you know, it's just a speculation, just an amusing comment almost. I smile to myself when he claims that the apocryphal texts, that most of those, the Christian apocryphal texts anyway, they're like fan fiction. But how he uses them like the historical facts.
Yeah.
That's like paper reporting, you know, really factually. And it's not even that he's reading the unadulterated apocryphal texts. He then changes them to import the purple, to import the cult things, and then says that's the truth.
While not acknowledging in 533 AD that the church changed it to get rid of, you know.
The original Jesus movement was a sect of Judaism run by his brother James, and they didn't have Jesus as a god. They, you know, he was just another rabbi with a different interpretation of Judaism. That's all that the real Jesus movement started, and then Paul took it to the Gentiles, and it started developing there. And later on, for lots of different reasons, they became more of a hierarchy.
Now we're living in the hell of the telephone game.
Yeah, and since then, other theologians have interpreted it and made their own theologies about it. So you got your Calvin, and you know it's very oppressive in Calvin, and you name it. It's miles away from what the original Jesus was about. Very, very far away.
Can I interject right quick? Because I don't want to step here too long. I'm just curious. So, were you all in a cult? Is that what this is? And then got out of a cult?
It was a personality cult. I
well, for some.
So the man that you guys are speaking about is more of a, you would say more of a Jared Leto character, right? He's more of a, he's not really a cult per se, but it's like a fan following kind of. Is that what this is?
Well, we have experienced, all of us but Paula have experienced being in the group and seen the group dynamics that are very much culty. And Ariel especially has read and seen emails where Hillman pretty much outlines his goals and how things should be ran. So it's kind of it's top down training, grooming, experiencing, if that makes sense. And I was groomed. Absolutely. I was there the longest, and it's been an experience for sure.
Were you there before Ariel?
I'm sorry.
Were you there before Ariel?
No.
I did not join until the fall of 2023.
Whereas Ariel and I knew him in the fall of 22.
Okay.
All right. But I was evicted before the other servers got going. All right. He didn't want me in those servers. He didn't want Ariel in those servers.
Can I ask
and this all happened,
question?
Jack. That's all happened by a podcast by Danny Jones.
Yeah, I saw the Danny Jones thing. I saw it because I'm not familiar with this person, but somebody in my chat was familiar with the person you're speaking about. Does he believe that Christ was a pedophile? Is what his belief is?
Yeah. And he's created this monster Jesus by changing words in the text, and being very convincing with it, and supporting his theory with the mesmeric music and the repetition and the images and claims of, the real authority he has, how he bullshits.
And to sit on the throne, throne with your drugs.
Yeah, you have to be high to listen to him, and it all goes in.
That's a major issue.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the lie, Jevim, when he said you didn't have to sit on the throne. Remember that?
Yeah. And
yeah.
He's even got teaching in it on he did a show, season 1, episode 4, originally called Ordo Serpentis Rosi, and it was an exhortation to join the little cult that had started on Snappy's server. And in that, he talks about sitting on the throne, and it's about holding the star. Star is code for cannabis. And it's, he was basically saying, take your stuff. And very often he would say, are you on your thrones? Are you sitting on your thrones? Let's begin, sort of thing. So
it's also worth mentioning that the language he used, he was talking about you need to sit on the throne of Satan in order to draw down the stars. And that's actually, that's where Snappy's channel name actually came from.
All the while, I have not knowing the history of, like I say, going to North culture, there's sitting on a throne, or the oracle, or I see,
Yeah.
He's only taking it from what the minimal Greek.
Yeah, it's too limited. He doesn't know any Semitic.
Yeah.
He doesn't know the history of how the Bible was
concluded.
He doesn't know how much it was changed. He takes what's said as if that is what was originally written, and nothing has changed since it was originally written. That's not true. I've done the critical scholarship. I know how much the texts were added, and they were edited, and they were changed, and so many different authors were put their own input into each text, that there's no way that a secret code could have been passed on through all of those different authors to keep that secret code intact with all the additions they put in. It's
unless you're talking about the Gnostic Christians and these traditions, there are groups that have continued since these ancient times.
Yeah.
And I show that with my work with the Charles King, his work, and to discredit Charles King would be doing yourself a grave disservice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that is a way a sort of Orphic Vox could survive throughout thousands of years, is to have this continuous line of secret groups.
I don't even know about the Orphic Vox, but see, Crowley has read through the Gnostic works and others before him to reconstruct their more libertine way of life and way of worship and their philosophies, and melded it in and rebirthed a sort of Gnosticism for today. And Hillman's read all of that. Now, I'd researched the original Gnostic texts from the Nag Hammadi library and what the heresiologists said about it. So that's some of my background. And I came in knowing that the certain rituals were happening, the semen communion, the rationale behind it, but none of it was to have a death and resurrection experience to give you ionic life. That was not why the semen communion was used. That was a completely different purpose, and it's very clear in their texts.
And the Christing, too.
Don't use that word as Christing. The word is smearing or anointing.
Right. Well, I'm saying there's a different meaning for Christing. Nobody.
Yeah. Okay.
It's also worth mentioning that his indoctrination has been so useful, or not so useful, but so powerful, that he's managed to convince people who don't even like him. That's what's scary.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
scary.
We've
yeah,
not
straight
even
up.
brought up the women. We've not even brought up the women that decide to sell off their things and to move closer to him and whatnot,
Oh.
have we?
No.
You know, that is a bit of an issue.
Yeah, he does attract people that get a fetish about him. He has a fan club, you know, of pick-me girls, and one of them,
Yeah, PDFs is what we're
quite
calling them now.
quite recklessly, just sold up where she was and went and bought a farm in Tucson to be close, hoping that, you know, she'd be able to meet him, and completely down-tooled with her old life and moved everything. You know, just.
Oh, I'm sure there's something going on down there that's bigger than we know.
Well, I mean, we know that he lived with the theater professor during his divorce, and she footed the bill for a lot.
No.
Yes, that's right.
It wasn't the divorce. It was during his time at St. Mary's. Can we get this straight?
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right.
It needs to come out very factually. He was employed only for 1 year as an adjunct professor. Yeah. An adjunct professor, probably for only 2 days a week, because he was only on 15 grand. Okay. At the end of that season, which was the September 2014 to July 2015, that was his only employment as a teacher. He was then he was not rehired. He was not rehired for the following year, but he's already, you know, he even said he'd started teaching his Jesus theory to them, and this is what got so many students interested and wanted to sign up, hoping he'd be teaching the following year, but his contract wasn't renewed. He then had Chewie and her older brother with him after the divorce, and he then as such had no salary, 2 children to look after and himself, and Judy Myers very kindly offered to pay his rent. He was then hired as a janitor to give himself some income because he wanted to stay there, because he'd already persuaded Judy Myers to do the Seneca's Medea play the following fall. So he was hired as the translator, and he apparently, people complained he made it more sexualized than it needed to be. I wonder why. And he was also the advisor. During that fall term, he did a public symposium. So faculty staff went, members of the public went, people of interest wanted to know what was going on. So I don't exactly know what was being taught there, but, you know, he was obviously enthusing about Greek, he was enthusing about Medea, he was enthusing about probably the things that interest him that were a little bit risque. So anyway, that was the symposium. During the rehearsals, this is when he started getting far too familiar with the students. And you can see he got over-attracted to one of them. Even asked her, "Do you have a boyfriend?" And she said, "No." "Yes, I do." And he said, "How dare anyone take the place that reserved for me?" And he said, and this really shocked her.
He also asked her about her period, asked her if she got like a migraine the first day of her period, because apparently, according to him, that women who get that are like more powerful or something. Which, first of all, regardless of the reason, you do not ask any of your students.
No way.
Any woman that.
Yeah, and he'd also emailed, or put it this way, from his deposition, you can see that he was quite, he honored Bacchus. He said that he honored Bacchus, and Bacchus was about wild sex, and the miners would whip there'd be whipping happening. So he also got, he brought a whip into the play as well, and he got the students to whip him to show in rehearsal, to show that, you know, it's not going to hurt, do it. So they got him whipping him, and he has shared that he ejaculated during that time. It was exciting for him. And in his deposition, you can see him praising a group of pagan ladies who do BDSM, and he wrote an article for them. So, you know, there's that edge to him. He's quite happy to worship like Bacchus did, put it that way. But anyway, after the debacle with the fasciners, because they were quite penis-shaped apparently, and they didn't want the faculty admin didn't want them to be too obvious. As part of the introduction to the play, the students would come in waving them and cursing the audience, basically using that line from Medea, which he's got tattooed in his arm. Greed has stained your soul. Yeah.
They shook it at they shook the phallic applicator at a priest or something.
Yeah. Oh, well,
he brags about that. He says that's the reason he got fired, right? Because they shook it at him.
Okay, I need to finish up very quickly here, but I just want to say that he was fired from his janitorial job for the sexual misconduct. It was nothing to do with the fascinas or a prohibition on his freedom of speech, because the admin didn't want him to use the fasciners. They substituted for something that he said looked more like bananas. So they still did that. And he has claimed it was freedom of speech violation, and that it's prejudiced people against him as an academic, and he's now not able to get employment because of them, and he tried to sue them. It all fell apart. But during all this time, Judy Myers then, when he was sacked, Judy Myers moved in with him, bought the property and moved in with him, and he owes her over $100,000 for all that she gave him for those 3 years that she was with him. He went through the court case that he tried to sue the university for defamation of character and professional defamation. Didn't have a leg to stand on. All the evidence came out because he'd been emailing Judy Myers during the rehearsals, all excited about what I told the student and what she said back to me. And it's all there in black and white in his own writing. So he's completely got not a leg to stand on. But I bring this up just to say, don't trust what he says. Time after time after time, he can be found out, whether it's the text, whether it's his past, or whether it's the persona that he tries to give and his claims of occult powers. None of it is there if you actually look for it.
You just have to go digging.
Yeah, and he doesn't want this to be exposed because as a narcissist, you can't have your mask taken off. So he's done his best to just keep me silent. And I've had all sorts of slanders up against me. And he even had Danny Jones ask about me. This is on his Patreon. He comes out with about 6 absolute slanders against me, which I can give the whole proof back. And I did a long comment with links to screenshots just to prove that Ammon is not I'm not the one that's lying. So anyway,
right.
To go now.
All right. Thank you for hanging out, Allie, and being such a brave warrior for your truth, especially, and your experiences and what you have found.
Okay. And what I'm saying,
thank you, Allie.
Yeah, it's my personal observation. It doesn't mean it's true, but this is, just as the writer, this is what I've deduced so far. And my views of him has changed along the way, but I don't see him as somebody you can trust at all. So I think that I can definitely say, no matter what the details are, I cannot trust him. All right. So I've got to say goodbye. It's been lovely being able to talk. You can carry on now. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Allie.
Thank you, Allie. Well, I'd like to wrap it up too, because it's a gorgeous Saturday and we've been going for 2.5 hours. But regardless of how you feel about Hillman, or the cult that seems to have just really accumulated around him and become a strong army for him, or flex demons rather. People in these positions, they really need to take care of what they do and how they do it. And most of the time they totally abuse that position that they've been given. As like an overseer of other people's souls, right? Their minds. And to me, what I have experienced is spiritual graping. That is what I can say I honestly feel that Hillman is doing, and that the cult is doing, because it is all spun from Hillman, regardless of the plausible deniability that he has, and that he has, I feel, orchestrated around him. To me, it feels like spiritual graping. And anybody in these positions that are not very careful with everything that they say and do, I mean, they need to be looked at. All spiritual leaders, all leaders, period. I think we need to bring back citizen journalism. I think that we are our brother's keepers, and I think that we all need to hold each other accountable for our actions, our words, and our deeds. And I think that's how we're going to create a better society for children to thrive in, honestly. And that's my closing statement. Ariel, do you have any closing comments?
Not really. There will always be the future.
Okay. All right. Paula, do you have any closing comments?
Oh, yes. I really appreciate this, and I'm far sorry that I'm not sorry, but sad I'm sick, Lee. But I want to be able to tell you what I can do it later. I just think it's important that the documentation is presented, and I have a synopsis, but I can't tell you what the other part that I want to do until I get it written out. But it will kind of show that Hillman is misled, besides the things that you and Ellie have done and the documentation that Ellie has. It's important.
Right.
And I am just really thankful for your work, Jevim. And it is about helping to just share our experiences and help people that have a true desire to learn truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you pay attention to these channels and how they treat people that push back. You know, questioning
I know that
is really
personally.
essential, right? Right? Like, and you can tell everybody in the server. I don't say you have to think a certain way or believe a certain way, and you're not allowed to talk about certain things. I might say, hey, move the tab, or let's get in a voice chat if you're wanting to, like, do some form of debate or something. But you don't have to believe the way I believe. And I welcome pushback from everybody. And so when people try to say, well, you're just trying to form your own cult, I'm like, no, I need individuals. I want people around me that are strong and can think for themselves. I want people around me that if they see me fuck up, they're going to say, hey, you're fucking up. I don't want people around me that will be enablers of shitty, poor behavior. I don't want that, right? But, you know, that's what cults need, are enablers, and more enablers for little soldiers. So, but all right. Thank you all for joining us. Everybody in the chat, thank you for contributing all the wonderful questions and comments and little snide remarks too. Those were fun even too. And I may have another one, because
Please. do.
I promise I will continue to always talk
Yes.
about Hillman and my experience, and I will never shut up. They want me to shut up. They're trying so hard to get me to shut up. I'm not going to shut up, y'all. I'm not. My stories have never changed. I've never had to lie, and I literally, we have a full server that only 5 people are in, that most people don't even know about, that's full of receipts that Ariel and I run. So anyway, until next time, have a wonderful weekend. And if you are going to lead, please lead with honesty, integrity, and a good heart.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. That's what. Bye, Kevin. Can you talk after?
Yep,
Can you
we'll
stay
talk
on here?
after. Bye-bye.
Or not here. Okay.